Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Lang, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Burton. In this podcast, we will talk about all things mental health. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Dr. Mark Burton, and this week we are going to get into women's expectations. But first, I have to tell you, I am going to be on another podcast.
Oh, what are you doing?
So, something that I usually avoid.
Politics?
Yes,
Politics?
yes. Okay, yeah. So I am
Tell me about it.
So I'm taking a class, a child and family advocacy class, and part of the assignment is I have to have a discussion with somebody who has differing political ideologies.
Okay.
And I've talked about this podcast before, Agreeable Disagreements. My friend Cameron does this podcast with his friend Andrew, and they are on opposite sides. Andrew is more.
I do remember you mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoy listening to their podcast because they do disagree and they discuss, right? It's not like this heated, obnoxious debate. It's a genuine discussion where two people who differ are discussing why they are defending their side is really how it comes across.
Okay.
And you know, I'm excited for it because I think that it's important to have conversations and to talk to people who do disagree with you, you know, because I think that's how we form new ideas and how we solidify our opinions. So I think it's important to do this. So go check out Agreeable Disagreements with Cameron and Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will do.
Yeah. Okay. So today's topic on women's expectations stems from this guy, Jimmy on Relationships. We've done a couple of podcast episodes based on his videos. He does these funny videos talking about, he kind of goes satirically into the common struggles that in relationships. And so he did this video, and how it starts off is the guy is, why do women expect so much more from men than they did generations ago? And so he's talking to this other guy and he's like, oh yeah, let's get into this. And he pulls out a clipboard. Okay. So I want to make a disclaimer, as we often do. And Mark and I disagreed with this a little bit. So the guy that is not the clipboard guy, right? Because the guy that's got the clipboard is.
Can I just ask a question? Aren't they the same guy? Isn't
yes.
He playing both? Okay.
Yes, it's the same guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's playing two different roles.
Right.
Yeah. So he's playing two different roles.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something.
No, you did.
Well, these guys are the same guy.
Yeah, okay. So it's the same guy, but he's playing two different roles. And in one role, he's a guy who's mad about women's expectations, and then the other guy with the clipboard is saying, okay, so is basically pointing out, oh, so women just want respect and emotional intimacy and connection and affection, right? And so I thought that the guy who was the part where he was playing the part where he's not the guy with the clipboard, I thought he was making a bit of a caricature of men. I don't think that all men, at least I said I don't think most men are that misogynistic, but maybe I'll at least say not all men are misogynistic like this guy who had the issue with the expectations.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with you when you say most men. I mean, we're qualifying it in some way. It's just, as you pointed out before we started recording, you hang out with a lot of men who are really kind and sensitive and, not that way. And the men that I see typically in my office are having trouble in their relationships. And so to me, I thought that the video was pretty spot on as far as what I see.
Yeah.
The guys, I can't remember some of them, but, talking, sharing emotions, sharing household chores, things like that. Like those are the expectations. And the guy who you're labeling as a caricature, I mean, I don't hear it quite like that. I mean, he's doing it to be funny, certainly, and to make a point. But I hear those things all the time.
So, and maybe it was mostly just the last two that I thought were the more misogynistic ones.
Tell me remind me what were the last?
The last two is, and heaven forbid we should follow a half naked woman on Instagram or Facebook.
Okay. Like, do you know how many times I've had that in my office? Where that, I mean,
Okay,
not
again.
always, but
Yeah.
the wife or the partner is really upset because the guy's doing that.
Yeah. Right.
That is not that is not unusual. I hear that often.
Okay. Okay.
I try
Mm-hmm.
and stay neutral in a lot of things, but
Yeah.
I mean, if I think something is clearly a problem, I will certainly say it. And maybe our listeners who follow us know that I'm kind of anti social media,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what they're talking. I mean, that's a social media thing, right? To follow
Yeah.
someone, yeah.
Right.
So what was the other one? So the
So
other
the
one was
other one is like, oh, and then, she wants, it was something about, oh, and I grope her, like beggars can't be choosers. That last
okay.
one,
So
I
I
was like,
hear it
wow.
all the time, all the time, and from all ages of men and women.
Okay.
And and when I talk to the men, it's like they're trying to be nice I don't know
Yeah.
that they're necessarily trying to initiate sex. They're trying to
Uh-huh.
make a connection,
Yes.
and they have absolutely no clue how to do it any other way. See,
Mm.
as I was looking at the outline and the things we're going to talk about tonight, for me, I think it's a cultural problem the way we raise men,
Yeah.
typically.
Yep.
And I hope that's changing. I would hope that we're not raising as many men that way. I can think of two current clients where
Mm.
the men do that,
Yeah.
and their wives say, "Please don't do that."
Okay, see now, and when they say please don't do that, we have an issue because I want to push back on, the groping thing a little bit
Uh-huh. Okay.
because I think that really can come down to dialogue because I think sometimes and it depends on how you're groping, right? Because I mean, I think, sometimes they're just trying to maybe be a little flirtatious. So I think if you can have a dialogue and if you say, I want to understand why you're doing this and what this means to you. And
Yeah.
then, so a woman can ask that of a man. The man needs to say, okay, how do you feel when I do that? Is this something that you appreciate or you find, that you do find maybe sexy or you do find, fun and playful? So it can be okay. So I'm not going to say, like, I guess,
Well,
I mean,
okay, maybe, but I'll tell you, I've never found a woman who likes it.
really? Okay,
No,
I guess it depends on
no.
what you call groping. I mean, because sometimes, as we're walking by, Curtis will come by and he'll pinch me in the bottom. And he's just kind of doing it in a flirtatious, playful way. And that doesn't bother me but then again, I also know we also have a very good, strong
See,
emotional
see,
connection.
see, I think it's that. I think it's
Okay.
that piece that's
Okay.
missing. That piece is missing from the couples that I see. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in my office.
Okay.
And so, I do want to acknowledge that I'm seeing couples who are having problems anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in the context of the relationship, if they had this strong emotional bond and that was going on, it probably wouldn't have the same impact. I agree
Okay.
with you on that. So
Yeah.
I can see what you're talking about.
Well, I do it to him. I do it to him
And
too. So there's
we're
also
we're
that.
coming, yeah, we're coming about it from
Okay.
different experiences. So I can
Mhm.
certainly see how you and your relationship with Curtis that makes sense.
Mhm.
If you're in a relationship where you aren't necessarily talking to each other or connecting,
Yeah.
and then somebody comes by and pinches you in the behind, you aren't going to like it because it's too
Yeah.
much. How about let's have a conversation first before you do that. So I agree
Mhm.
with you.
Yeah,
I
and
can see what you're talking about.
exactly, but if you don't have that, strong emotional connection or if you
Yeah.
don't have a
Right.
good
Right.
foundation,
Right.
then you're going to feel like a piece of meat. Like
Hmm.
you're
Well, that's
touching me
it.
because you want something.
That's it exactly. That's it
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so that
And
makes sense.
yeah, I wouldn't want to feel that way, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
okay. I thought it would be interesting to talk about why women's expectations have shifted.
Well,
So,
I tell me your ideas, and I'll tell you mine. I mean, they're probably similar.
yeah, okay.
I would say.
So, I think so it really comes down to women can do it on their own. So I looked this up and in the 50s only 15% of women had jobs outside the home. And then through the 60s, so this means like I'm pretty sure through the 60s, for the most part, once a woman married, she quit working and she stayed home
Hmm.
and she was a homemaker. That
Yeah.
was the way the world worked. And so women were dependent on men to provide them because it was not acceptable, socially acceptable for a married woman to be working outside of the home. And so, women didn't have as many options. That was their option, was to get married and have a family.
Right.
So that's not the case. Women are equal parts in the workforce, and they really genuinely do not need a man for any part of their goals or their aspirations. They can have a career, they can have kids without a man. Literally, they can go to a sperm bank and have kids, and they can do it all on their own. So they expect more.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I suspect that it might have changed during World War II. And the reason for that is that so many men were taken out of the workforce, and the women then had to go in and fill in. And I think that might be when it started. But I agree, 50 years ago or 100 years ago, what a woman needed if, she got married, she wanted a roof over her head and someone to provide food for the kid. And, as far as were there other expectations? Not really. You were happy and, fortunate to have that. And so you're right. As women have entered the workforce and they make more money now, a lot of them, some don't. I want to acknowledge that, in our society, there's a huge divide between the haves and haves not. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. But so women, they expect more from their spouse or their partner because typically his role is not just to provide the money, which it used to be.
Yeah.
So I think you're right about it. Yeah. I've seen a huge change that way, that women aren't willing to put up with a man who doesn't connect. Now, again, I'm talking about the women. Well, I'm talking about my own marriage too, and the women that I see. I think Lindy expects us, and from the start has expected a strong emotional connection. I know that my mother did not, but she was in the workforce, for most of my life. And so both my parents worked, which was unusual for that time, back in the early 1960s. I think that what the biggest difference that there are two. The women that I see, I think they want more of an emotional connection. But again, those are the couples who are coming in to see me.
Yeah.
Because they're unhappy.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's about the how you're handling the chores around the home, how you divide that up. And so again, I think that in the past, if the woman didn't work outside the home, then maybe it made more sense that they took care of most of the things in the home. But that's not the case anymore. And so they expect it to be more equal in the home.
Yeah, and I think that is the two components where the expectations have shifted, right? Is emotional intimacy and equality, right? I think that's real. Those are the two main areas where expectations. I mean, because I think women do still expect men to work, even if they're working. I think they still expect men to work too. Now, I will say that sometimes there could be couples who have arranged for dad to be a stay-at-home dad, which is, perfectly viable. But if both couples are working, or both couples agree, hey, we're gonna be a dual income household for whatever reason, then she still expects him to work, right? And she still expects him to provide an income, and she also still expects him to help out with paying the bills and caring for the kids. But she expects him to do more in terms of being involved as a father. She expects emotional intimacy, and she expects him to pull his weight around the house. And if two people are working, then I think that is totally reasonable.
I think it's important to acknowledge, at least this is my perspective, we have lived in a male-dominated culture for a very long time. And to a certain extent, it still is, although becoming less so.
Yeah.
But it's still, I don't think anybody would say it's 50-50. There's still certainly wage disparity between males and females for doing the same job. We know that. And I think the expectations make sense to me. And so when I see a couple, I think they know that I'm really on board with trying to help the man typically in the relationship become more emotionally connected and, figure out a way they can have a conversation about who does what around the house. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's never going to be equal, but I think a lot of people know that. But you can get it closer to
Yeah.
being equal. I mean, and often it's the man who's doing more around the house. I certainly have those couples as well, and for whatever reason. But the goal is, I think, to have it as equitable as you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea, and I've been hearing this more and more, the idea that marriage should be 50-50 is it's unrealistic
Well, you can
because
never get it exactly 50-50. I mean, you can
yeah.
try to make it fair and equitable. That's about as good as you can get.
Yeah, well, and the reality is in a good relationship, you're going to have days where it's like I only have
Yeah.
20% to give and your
Yep.
partner's going to come in and fill that other 80. That's a
Yeah.
good relationship.
Yeah.
And then I saw an ad for, I think it might have been for a book or a podcast or something like this, but it was a therapist talking about this. And she said, she went into what happens when we both say, when someone comes and says, I've only got 20, and then your other partner says, well, I've only got 10. Well, what
Hmm.
do you do then? You sit down and you have a conversation and you come up with a plan for kindness and to just survive the day or survive that moment.
Right. And I think a lot of times it's what can we let go,
Yeah.
for a day or two,
Yeah.
because, maybe you do like the dishes to be done every
Mhm.
day. But
Mhm.
you know what? If they don't get done, it's not the end of the world. And
Yeah.
if you each have, 10% or 20%, then you just have to have the dialogue. But that goes back to what we've talked about so many times, is that
Yeah.
one of the most important things between a couple is the ability to have a dialogue about anything.
Mhm. Yeah.
And did you notice in this YouTube video,
Mhm.
did you notice that he talked about listening, understanding, validation, and empathy?
Maybe.
He brought that up. I was
Yeah.
pretty pleased that the guy with the clipboard
Yes.
said, "Oh, do you mean women expect you to listen to them and have validation and empathy?" Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right?
uh,
Yeah.
which I think is really key. And I want to say again that I've said before, I don't think it that men either don't want to. I think it's that they don't know how and they haven't been raised that way. And
Yeah.
for me, it's just a skill set. That's
Mhm.
all it is. That's why, a while ago when I said it's a cultural problem, and I think we haven't done a good job of teaching males the skill set
Mhm.
that they can be linear in their thinking. They can also relate to other people on an emotional level.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't have to have one or the other. You can have both. And that's the other thing for women that I've said
Mhm.
before, is that I think women, the cliche is that they're all about emotions.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's ever true, but I think that once they entered the workforce, then they were able to switch between, that linear problem solving thinking and the more emotionally based thinking. And they do a better job of moving back and forth.
Yeah.
And the only thing that forces men to have to confront that is in their relationship, because they
Mhm.
don't really have to confront it in the workplace. And so it's just a skill set that men can learn.
Right. And, I think that women should also be patient with men as well as they
Hmm.
are learning this skill set. And then you just need to remember that it's a process. There's no flip to switch to help them to understand.
Right.
And and I think it also could be helpful to try to understand things from their perspective or try to see it the way they see it or try to understand emotions the way they feel emotions.
Well, you can certainly do that, but I think also it's the empathy part is
Hmm.
to, instead of personalizing it, 'cause I get a lot of, in this case, women. We're making generalizations because sometimes it
Sure.
is flipped.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's the man who wants the emotional connection, the woman can't. But in most cases, the women tend to take it personally, like, oh,
Mm.
he doesn't love me, he doesn't want to connect with me. And I really try and help shift that to, he doesn't really know how.
Yeah.
And so when he wants a connection and he passes you by in the kitchen, he pinches your behind because that's
Yeah.
what he knows.
Right.
And as opposed to saying, "Hey, could we sit on the couch and talk with each other for a bit?" See, that's a skill that a lot of men don't know how to do that.
Yeah. So, and I was just thinking about this, like, yeah, sometimes Curtis and I do, walk by and give each other a playful slap on the behind or a pinch. But we also have moments throughout the day where we'll just embrace, right? Just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
gentle hug and a kiss just because you happen to be there and I want to connect with you in a
Hmm.
physical way. So,
Yeah.
it's all about the type of relationship that you have and the way you connect. And if you're having good connections, then it's just playfulness.
But also men can learn to have a different type of touch. Because I'm thinking
Yeah.
about my relationship with Lindy, and I've never been the pinch the butt kind of guy ever.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if I pass her by in the house or go by her, I would guess at least 75% I'm just like I'll touch her arm or back or
Yeah.
something, and it
Mm-hmm.
won't be long. But and she has certainly verbalized to me that it has a lot of meaning. That
Mm-hmm.
even as I'm passing by, I make this very brief physical connection that is certainly soft. It's not suggestive in any way. It's just
Right.
here I am and I've touched you. And so men can learn that that is also a good way to connect just in the moment.
Yeah, and something that we haven't brought up in a while that I think can really come into play with this is love language,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
knowing your partner's love language. And so I don't know that we've talked about, maybe you have told me your love language, but I'm just going to take a guess and say yours is physical touch.
Well,
Or at least
I've
physical touch is
I've
high up
actually
there for
never
you.
thought about it. I don't want to. I mean, I
Hmm.
think the idea of love languages is important. I read an article about this, and there's absolutely nothing that backs this up.
Oh,
That people,
really? Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
but I don't want to throw
Yeah.
cold water on the idea because I certainly use it myself with other people, with clients.
Hmm.
That how do you feel love? And so it makes sense to a lot of people. I don't know that it makes sense for me. I
Okay.
can tell you what I don't. I don't like getting gifts is not a
Hmm.
that is not a thing for me.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, as I look at my relationship, I mean, Lindy's really the only relationship I've ever been in. Of
Hmm.
course, I mean, we started dating when I was 16, and I mean, we've grown up together to have the touch and the communication.
Hmm.
So I don't know that I could say what my love language is.
Hmm. You should take the quiz because now I'm curious.
Yeah,
But I can tell, or I know I can recognize just from that one way that you give love and probably a
it's
way that
touching. Yeah,
yeah, is touching, and it's probably a way you like to receive love. You probably
that
enjoy it. And that's something that obviously both you and Lindy are conscious of. And again,
right.
it comes down to that connection and love map, John Gottman's
Hmm.
love map. You and
Right.
Lindy are
I
are
like
both,
that.
yes, you're both very, very aware of what's going on in the other's world.
Hmm.
And, you understand how the other person gives and receives love. And, kind of going back to this idea of groping, if physical touch is your primary love language and you don't have, or if that is a way that where, you enjoy physical touch and that's an important way for you to feel loved, groping is going to feel very insulting and very hurtful if
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have other good
Hmm.
emotional, soft, gentle touches.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, physical touch is very much a way I give and receive love. It
Hmm.
is very, very important to me. I mean, cuddling, in fact, if I could have my own love language, it would be cuddling because I just,
Yeah.
I love closeness and being close to people that I love and care about in a physical way. So I enjoy it when Curtis and I have these we walk by and we have this playful banter and this playful pat. It's meaningful to me. And
Hmm.
so, I think that again, it goes back to what I said earlier of you need to try to understand where your partner is coming from. When you're touching me this way, what do you mean by it? What are you trying to say to me when you do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. Yeah. Having the dialogue is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, what I try and help men to understand, and I hope listeners, the men who are listening, this is just a skill set that you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
See,
Yeah.
I sometimes hear people say, "Oh, that's not who I am. That's not my personality." And
Yeah.
that's nothing to do with your personality or who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's about behavior,
Yeah.
and you can learn behavior, and the behavior has meaning. The touch has meaning. dialogue has meaning. When you're doing the dishes, like for instance, if we talk about expectations around the home, one of the things that comes up fairly often, and typically for women, is that often the men wait to be asked. Could you
Mm-hmm.
could you do the dishes? Even though they're walking by, they're I mean, it's probably obvious they're looking at the dishes that are in the
Yeah.
sink, and so why the spouse tends to wonder, why do I have to ask,
Mm-hmm.
to do the dishes? Why can't, if you walk by and see dishes in the sink, then you go ahead and load the dishwasher. And the way they frame it is they want their spouses to be more present
Yeah.
or to notice things as opposed to being asked all the time. Now, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you can't ask someone to do something, but most of the tasks that happen in a home are
Yeah.
pretty repetitive. Dishes every day, clothes, often. I mean, keeping the house clean. There are all these things that happen on a somewhat regular basis. And so I think the expectation, how that has changed, at least what I see in the office, is that I think women expect their spouse to be more present and be more attentive and to not have to wait to be asked to do something.
It's mental load. It's
Yeah.
that mental load. That's something that I've been seeing a lot of talk of it on social media. Oh, in the last couple of years is this idea that women they carry the entire mental load for the family. And and
Yeah.
they often do manage the affairs for the entire family. I mean, they organize and run the kids' schedules, the kids' extracurricular activities, they plan the meals, they do the shopping, they do the cooking, and it's mental fatigue, right? You're carrying
Hmm.
the entire family, and women want men to be able to help
Do
with
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I see that often.
Hmm.
And that is not an unreasonable expectation. It's
Yeah.
just for the men to pay attention
Yep.
more about what's going in the home and then take some initiative. See, and the biggest problem that I think men don't realize, maybe they
Hmm.
do, is that if their wife is in that role of being the one who's keeping track of everything,
Yeah.
then and asking for things to be done, then that puts her in the role of mother. Now, so
Yes.
she's mother to the children, but you don't want to be mother to your spouse.
No.
And that is often, one of the reasons that I see couples is
Hmm.
they just often the women want their spouse to be more assertive.
Yeah.
And when I say assertive in the, I'll do the wash today, or I'll go ahead and empty this dishwasher because it's full and it needs to be emptied. And,
Hmm.
just to take initiative and be assertive and do things.
Or for her to feel like she can leave for a day and that entire house isn't going to come crashing
Right.
around, like, or
Right.
nothing is going to get done and everything is just going to get dropped. It's like you can't survive one day without me. Like, you can't run this house
Hmm.
without me. You have, I mean, you can run a corporation or you can run an entire something at work, but you can't
Yeah.
run the
Yeah.
house. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that expectation shift feels more recent to me. I don't know if
I
you've
think
seen
that's
that.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what we're talking about recent, the last 10 years. I think it's
Okay.
started to
Yeah.
ramp up certainly more, that
Yeah.
expectation. Yeah.
And and I was thinking about it. Why are women just better at doing that? Because in general, women are better at just managing the household. And women, and I hear this all the time. People say, "Oh, men will say I'm the co-manager or I'm the assistant manager. I just do what I'm told."
Well, I don't
Which,
know about better. I mean, I would
okay.
disagree. I mean, I think that men can be is equally good at doing that. It's just they don't, and
Okay.
they believe they can't. It's
Yeah.
a it's the same thing. I saw a couple. They just had a brand new baby,
Hmm.
and so the wife, the mother, is having this reaction of she does everything. She changes the baby, she bathes the baby, everything.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
husband's over here saying, "I'm afraid I'm going to do something wrong or something." So
Oh,
so he
yeah.
hides behind this thing of fear as opposed to, like, neither one of them have had a kid before.
Hmm.
So why does he get to hide behind the fear of, oh, I'll do something wrong or I don't know what to do?
Hmm.
She didn't know what to do either, but somebody has to change the baby and bathe the baby. And so, men just have to stop being afraid and stop using that as an excuse to, I don't know how to do the laundry. Well, learn how to do the laundry. I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to cook dinner. Learn how to cook dinner. These are not hard tasks.
So, and I agree with you, but I want to go a little bit deeper into his fear of doing something wrong. Why does he feel that way? Does he feel that way because
usually this happens in longer term relationships. He feels that way because she tells him he's doing it wrong.
Yes. And I think that is one area where I think women could probably do better is they do it themselves because it's not going to get done right. So you either need to patiently explain to him the way you want something done and be okay with the way he does it, or you need to just let it go. Like it's okay if the dishes get put away not the way you would do it, or if the dishes get loaded in the dishwasher wrong, he did the dishes. Well, okay, you have to pick.
Yeah. But the whole idea of loading dishes in the dishwasher wrong is so foreign to me.
I agree.
They're going to get clean. But you bring up a really good point.
Yes.
A really good point is that if you're going to criticize what your spouse does, that decreases the likelihood that they're going to do it again. In fact, they'll just stop doing it. And so going back to one of my favorite Harville Hendricks statements, one of the major tasks of marriage is to learn to be comfortable with difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't load the dishwasher the same way Lindy does, or I don't put the towels away the same way she does. And it's okay because these are not life-threatening choices. And
no, they're not. Yeah.
So, quit criticizing. Gottman's research shows, again, this is a generalization, it's statistical though. From his research, it's more likely that women are going to be the ones to criticize.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more likely that men are going to be the one to stonewall, which is they retreat and they don't talk and they don't engage. And so there are stereotypes for a reason.
Yes.
And so often, in the office, we're trying to help the female to quit criticizing when he does the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, thank you. Thanks for doing the dishes. That was really helpful. And for him to stop retreating and running to his man cave and hiding and engage more.
Yes. Yep. I agree. Okay. So that does it for women's expectations. Takeaways?
Right. So it's just a takeaway. I like to do takeaways. Men, you can learn how to do these things.
Yep. Yeah.
This is not astrophysics. So it's, it's just cooking, cleaning, learning how to talk, sharing.
Yep. Guess what? If you're human, you have emotions.
Yes, that's right.
And it may feel foreign at first to share them if you've never shared them in your life. But once you start sharing them, it's going to feel pretty good to have somebody that you can lean on in an emotional capacity.
I agree.
Okay. So next week, we are going to get into compassion fatigue. So that I think is going to be a good episode because I think this happens to people quite a bit, especially in a caregiver capacity.
Right.
So
I think it can happen also as parents often.
Yes.
Because our kids need us and we should be there for them. But sometimes it can feel overwhelming. If you don't get a break. And I would put that under that same heading of compassion fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. All right. So we will see you all next week.
Have a good week, everyone.
Have a question for Dr. Burton? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Liz Lang. Music is by Audio Lounge.